I'm Richard Littlejohn. I am a valuation analyst within FTM, which stands for Finance, Treasury, and Mergers and Acquisitions. And we have Alice, who is financial lead in trading and supply commodities. We will be having Bola, who is currently just in an airport. So he'll be dialing in a little bit later. He's a senior manager within Shell Mobility. So the intent of the webcast today, slightly a little bit different. So we initially wanted to have half of the webcast to be more of a technical workshop looking into deal valuation and the kind of financial elements around deal making. But because we can't really gauge the kind of the commercial backgrounds or the kind of degrees that you guys have, we're going to skip that and we're going to look at bringing value to work, which will be the second element of it. So we'll have myself and Alice starting, and then Bola will come in at a little point, and then there'll be an opportunity to ask questions and kind of have a wider discussion. So from value point of view, we have two perspectives. We have how do we increase our value internally and externally within the job market, and also the importance of value alignment with the business that you choose to work in or that you work in currently. So if I give you guys a quick intro into Shell's kind of strategy at the moment. So everybody knows powering progress. It sets out to kind of accelerate our transition into net zero emissions. Our current strategy designed to create value for our shareholders, our customers, and the wider society. So when we look at the powering progress, it can be split into four main goals, which is generating shareholder value, achieving the net zero emissions, powering lives, and respecting nature. So usually generating shareholder value is often the most recognizable, and it's what you probably hear talked about the most in the media and in the general public. But for Shell, all of those goals are interlinked, and there is equal importance placed on all of those elements, and it goes far beyond the financial metrics of profit and loss. Within the UK, Shell UK aims to invest 20 to 25 billion in the UK energy system by 2030, which will be one of the biggest single investments in the UK energy system. Within my role, I see that through the deal making that we have in terms of the kind of value we place on those deals, and we can have a look into that a little bit more. But I'd like to introduce Alice. Alice will be able to provide her story in terms of her journey so far and how she's been able to create value for herself and be an asset to Shell. So Alice, take the
Great.
floor, please.
Thank you very much, Richard, and good evening, everyone. So I am Alice Feldwick, and I'm currently a trade, commodity, and financing lead in Shell Trading, and I'll explain a bit more later in terms of what that involves. But just very quickly, I just want to give a bit of background about myself. I'm of Ugandan origin. I lived in several countries within Africa, but then I came here for my A-levels, and I studied at the London School of Economics, and I did a master's as well before starting my job at Shell. What's quite interesting about me is that I didn't get a graduate role within Shell. I kind of fell into Shell by accident. So it was a bit of a gap filler, can I say. I got a temping job in trading, literally a very basic job, paying invoices for shipping companies. But even when I did step in such a small job, I realized the kind of organization and the company that I was in. And I thought, actually, why don't I try to stay here, become permanent, and try to do something here, as opposed to, trying to get a graduate role elsewhere. So after a month or so, I was made permanent. And then within 6 months, I can say this is when I really started my career within Shell. And I got a job in Shell Trading as a crude oil trading analyst. I won't go into too much details about that, but basically it was a really, really good experience. It's like kind of front office trading where you're an analyst on the desk and you see how the traders generate cash value to the business. And it was very, very interesting for me. But I mean, picking on what Richard was saying a bit earlier, in terms of making yourself an asset within your career, I could be very honest and say who I was then when I started my career and who I am now are two very, very different people. At that point, I was not very sure of myself. The confidence was not there. I had a bit of maybe imposter syndrome. And so I would say easily that I was not really excelling within the trading business. So I then decided to take a step back and think, where do I think my skill set is better fitted? And so I then moved to treasury. So I moved, this is when I did the direct link into finance, and I moved to treasury. Within treasury, I stayed in treasury for about 5 years, and treasury is a really fantastic place to be in Shell. And I'll always definitely be treasury's biggest fan here, because it gives you a great overview of the whole organization. And I think when a lot of people speak about Shell, they think of Shell as just one company, but it's actually like maybe 50 or 60, 70 small companies which all feed into one parent company. And when you work in treasury, you sit within the ivory tower, can I say, and you get to see how the cash is generated, where the value comes from within all these different segments and parts of Shell. And if anyone has aspirations of being a CFO, again, I'd definitely say you should really experience being in treasury, because you really see how the treasurer there manages the capital structure of the company, how you manage your cash, when are you paying back your debt, when are you issuing more debt because you're running out of cash, how do you pay back your equity, all those very boring things that might be boring you, with apologies for that, but it's a fascinating place to be. And I stayed there for about 5 years before, again, I thought, okay, fine, now let's go back to the business and see exactly how they generate that cash. um, Shell loves restructuring. They love reorgs. So whenever there's a reorg, I always personally see this as an opportunity, as opposed to bad news. Because when a reorg happens within any organization, I kind of see it as a chance for me to leap forward and do something different, completely different to what I'm doing at the moment, where all jobs are open at the same time. So we then had a reorg during that time, and I then moved to the aviation business as a finance advisor. This was in 2019, so you can probably preempt what I'm going to say next. But when we started off in 2019, it was absolutely fascinating, because as you realize, and Richard was saying this as well, we're going through a transition at the moment. We're targeting net zero by 2050, but it's not going to be like one day when I don't know how many millions of emissions and then it's zero. It's a transitional period where we have to start reducing our emissions at the moment. And with the aviation business, which is one of the biggest contributors to carbon emissions, it's a huge challenge, because we're very far away from electric planes. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm in no rush to jump into an electric plane at the moment. And we also have the potential of maybe having planes which use hydrogen. And hydrogen is a very, very clean source of energy. But again, we still don't have that infrastructure in place. So what they did have is something called sustainable aviation fuel. And this is it's something you can use in replacement of jet fuel, and it has about an 80% reduction in carbon emissions when you put it in planes, and you could put it in everyday planes at the moment. So the focus really was growing that business, building the infrastructure, building it at airports. And as things were starting to pick up, of course, what happens? COVID-19 happens in 2020. Aviation sector is really harshly, targeted at that point, and everyone stops flying, and so the business kind of crumbles. So again, during that time, again, I thought, I really enjoyed what I was doing, but I thought maybe this is a good time to move somewhere else. We had another restructuring, and then I moved to trading in the role that I'm in at the moment. What I currently do is, it's maybe I'm going to be answering one of Richard's questions at the moment, is I feel quite at the forefront of what we're trying to do at Shell at the moment within this energy transition. So I work in the trading department, and what we do is we offer financing solutions to our counterparties in exchange for an offtake. And so what that basically means is, one of our counterparties will come to us and say, look, I have this gas asset here, but it's not yet developed, or I want to purchase that other asset, or I need money for my working capital, or I want to expand my business, or for whatever reason, they say, at Shell, I need 30 million in order to progress with my business. They then come to me and say, Alice, should we lend this person 30 million? We work like a bank. We look at their financial health. We look at it historically. We look at it going forward. We look at their technical assets. We look at to see whether they're producing enough. All these different elements. We put that all together, and then I can then say, okay, based on what I've seen, I believe we can comfortably lend them, let's say, 28 million over a 5-year period. So I basically structure the financing loan for that counterparty. But what we do as well on top of that is we then say, as we are giving you a loan, you then need to give us our offtake, our product, for us to be able to trade for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. And so where I'm going with this is we are really quite focused now on transitional grades because, as I mentioned before, we can't just switch off the taps. You know, I think everyone would love that if we stop producing hydrocarbons, but we can't just do that because our cars are not ready, the roads are not ready, the infrastructure is just really not there in place. The energy sources actually are not even there. So gas is a big product that we're looking at the moment. It has much, much less emissions than if you're to burn any crude oil, for example. And we're looking at lending money to investors within Europe who want to expand and bring on more gas within the UK, within Italy, within Germany, and all these other places. Another part that we're really focused on is with low carbon fuels. So I mentioned it earlier in terms of the sustainable aviation fuel. This can also be a substitute for diesel. And what is fascinating about this, it's a used cooking oil product. So it's basically a truck collector goes to KFC, they pick up all the oil that they're about to throw away. They actually sell it to them now because these people have realized that this has value. And they take it, they clean it, they sterilize it, they process it, they sell it to Shell. And Shell then has, we're building it at the moment, but we are going to have a HEFA plant, which can convert that product into a substitute for diesel. And you mix it with a bit of diesel, and then it produces a product which is 80% to 90% reduction in diesel. And so I'm trying to work with the desk to find more of those opportunities and finance them as well. So give them loans where, because they're such small companies, banks usually would not lend to them because they don't have a huge credit history, but we're trying to encourage them, help them, make them start up their business so that we can really start this energy transition. So I think I've overspoken a bit, but just quickly giving you a background in terms of what I'm doing at the moment. And yes, I'll happily pass on back to Richard.
Yeah, no, thank you for that introduction. It's great. And as you can see, I think we're all very interested in what we do. So you can always find that we'll always overtalk our, our allocated time. So I will give a quick introduction of myself. Before we do that, I'm not sure if all of you are aware of Menti. Menti is an anonymous website that we use at Shell, where you can insert questions and answers, and we will be running a Menti just after our introductions. So I believe Vanessa has put the link in the page. Yes, you'll be able to click directly through to that, and then we will be having a 5-minute Menti session together just to get everybody engaged. So if I give a little bit of an introduction of myself, I'll try to keep it brief. I took a very a long route to Shell. I had a gap year after high school. I had a year abroad. I had a gap year after university. And I applied to Barclays to work in compliance. I worked in the compliance grad scheme, and I worked in both retail banking and in the investment bank as well. In the middle of lockdown, I actually decided to quit my job, which was quite a big jump because a lot of people were actually losing their jobs, and grads were having their offers rescinded. But I decided to jump because I felt that finance was actually more suited to my skills and more of a challenge. So I decided to jump because I felt that I had both the technical experience gained from Barclays in terms of understanding the world of finance, but also the life experience that was needed, and that would really set me out to other people kind of entering as a kind of either a grad or a new entrant into the company. So for me personally, in terms of how I've built up value, I've seen value in almost 3 or 4 ways in terms of the technical knowledge that I've been able to gain. That's related specifically to finance. I won't go into that too much because it's kind of more generic. But then in terms of the non-technical skills that I've been able to kind of illustrate and evidence in terms of being analytical, having a learner mindset, being able to take accountability and deliver projects, and remaining objective, which I think in finance is very key. Then you have the people element and what I would consider the life skills or the life experience, which I find a lot of us a lot of us gain, but we don't always kind of absorb it and capture it in our value when we kind of speak to interviewers, or we look at what do I actually bring to the table. So I have worked in a few different industries. I've worked in social care, I've worked in hospitality, I've worked in compliance, and I've also worked in finance. I've also been very lucky to have lived in a few different countries, either through backpacking or through studying abroad. Um, and being of West Indian heritage, but living in the UK, I've been able to understand and kind of be immersed in loads of different cultures, right? So it means that when I'm connecting or talking to someone, I'm able to relate to them really quickly. I'm able to build an understanding with them, and actually build a relationship where I can actually collaborate with them in the workplace. But it's helped me a lot in job interviews. Um, and I think that's one of my strengths actually, is in terms of job interviews. And one of that points is actually my ability to just settle people and actually have a conversation with them before we start. Obviously, there are technical kind of elements to it, but that's something that I value quite a lot. Um, Also, in terms of my kind of skill set and my valuable traits, I would put care in there. Shell's values of honesty, integrity, and respect for people and care um, is something that we look to try and evidence in everything that we do, and making sure that your core values align with the values of the company that you work for, I think is essential. Um, so as we go in, we'll have a little bit of a more discussion on specific elements of value, but that's just from my point of view. I do believe we have Bola on now, so I'll introduce Bola. Yes, hi Bola.
Hey, Richard, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can do.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, thanks for the introduction. Hi everyone. My name is Bola Anthony. I'm a senior finance advisor within what we term mobility. I've been at Shell about 10 years, just over 10 years. And prior to joining Shell, I've essentially had a just over 17-year finance career. Started off at IBM, then moved into Lloyds Bank, and then like I mentioned, now at Shell. So I guess I also had a longer route into Shell from having a career and working for other companies prior to joining Shell. So I started off my finance career in IBM when I joined their what they call their internship scheme back in actually let me not show my age. But I started off as an intern. But actually some of the things I'm going to say is going to probably show my age. In the When I joined my team, one of the things that became really apparent was one of the areas that I could show my value was in my ability to navigate spreadsheets and do analysis. So quite quickly and during that process of being an intern, my aim was always to try and demonstrate. And I think, again, like Alice mentioned, I had elements of imposter syndrome, but I was very keen to kind of demonstrate that my place within the organization was one that was of value. So I would continually try and demonstrate ways in which I could use my my IT skills to bring value to the company. So actually at the time, so I would do that via on spreadsheets, so turning things that were previously manual process into incredibly automated processes. But also one other thing that I did was, as I got a handover from the previous person who did the role, I realized that the handover wasn't the best. So I created a web version of the handover documents and all of the various process notes of all the various systems that I used. And in my own time, I essentially created like a mini website. the work was received so well that it got nominated for an award within the organisation, and then the website was then used to was then put on the company's intranet, and then it was then used as a way of onboarding all people, and it was expanded to all business areas. So I guess the reason I'm telling that story is because I think there's so many different ways you can give or provide value to an organization, and utilize skills that you might think are innocuous or relatively easy, but bringing those to the fore really allows people to perceive you as someone who is valuable and therefore really value having you as part of their company. So I then moved into Lloyds Bank, did a few years working in finance, looking after the finances on big IT projects. After a few years later, like Alice mentioned, Lloyds had a restructure, and restructures are very much part of working for a large organization, as I've learned over my 17 years career. And Lloyds had a restructure, and I used that opportunity. And again, I'm of agreement with Alice is that restructures provide an opportunity to take a pause, look at where you are in your career, and look at whether going external to the company that you're currently at is the right thing. So that's what I did. I applied. I was offered a role within the UK mobility team in Shell, and decided that would be the right time for me to move organisations. So I started off in the UK mobility team. I've spent all 10 years of my Shell career within the mobility business. What is mobility, you probably will ask? It's essentially what most people will think of when they hear the word Shell. It's forecourts and petrol stations. So within the UK, we have about 500 plus sites, we did at the time. And I would work, I'd be the finance person working with marketing teams who would design various marketing campaigns. I would also work alongside the convenience retail team. So they'd be responsible for sweets, chocolates, Mars bars. And I would be responsible for trying to analyze if they were to run a promotion or an offer, would that bring value to the business? Again, this was something where I was able to, and it's probably one of the reasons why I've spent as long as I have in mobility, is that you can place yourself in the position of the customer. We all, whether you might not own a car and fill up petrol, but you probably buy sweets and chocolates and fizzy drinks. So when people are coming up to you and offering you, yep, should we run this promotion? We think it's going to do X amount. You can place yourself in the position of a customer and go, would I as a customer do this? And that's what I really enjoyed about being in the mobility business. Now I work within the global team, and the global team are responsible predominantly for setting the long-term strategy of the organization. And as you can now imagine, within mobility, that's essentially electric vehicles, and how we will introduce e-mobility into the business. Specifically, that's going to require acquisition, because in order to hit some of the targets that we've set, incredibly ambitious ones, we're only going to hit those targets by acquiring other startups and small companies that are doing this really well, and bringing them into Shell and trying to learn lessons from how they've done it, and use them as vehicles for accelerating our growth. So yeah, I get to work on potential acquisitions across the world, assessing whether the company is worth acquiring, looking at their financials, understanding the financials and doing due diligence on how they've managed their accounts, looking at placing a valuation. I'll normally work with valuation analysts like Richard, who will place a value on the company, and then I will use that valuation to go into negotiations and structure a potential acquisition of that company. Once the acquisition goes through, if it does, we will then work with that company to then implement and integrate them as part of Shell. So yeah, that's I guess a quick starter for 10 in terms of what I do and where my career has taken me. yeah, I'll hand over back to Richard to continue the rest of the presentation.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
great, Bola. Thank you very much, man. Perfect. So let us just turn to Menti quickly. The link is in the chat box. So I'm going to share my screen now. And if I could ask you guys just to use 3 words to describe your current mood at the moment. And then, yeah, we can just have a chat through it. So at the moment, what have we got here? We have got, can you all see the screen? All good? Yeah, perfect. All right. So at the moment, we've got engaged, we've got wonderful, we've got cold. Yep, definitely cold time of the year still. Grateful, we've got hopeful, we've got inspired, we've got tired. I hear you, I do. We've got motivated, we've got questions. Okay, well, that's good. We'll get some time to talk through those as well. We've got clarifying, which will also come through the questions as well. So that's good. Hopeful, but burnt out. Well, we can definitely talk through that. Definitely, if anybody wants to talk about that, then feel free to ask questions and we can give you our personal experience. Freezing, yep. Enthusiasm, perfect, lovely. So it's good to see people are involved. All right, if we move to the next one, can we see if we can move to the next one? I'm not sure if I click. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so what option best describes your current work status? So we've got 1 bachelor's or master's student. Hello. We've got a couple who are fresh into the corporate world, a couple with 3 to 5 years, a couple with 5 years, which is good. And I think the panel also, we're quite split actually. I think between probably about 3, 5 and more as well on Bola's part anyway. Perfect. Analyst as well. Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. So the last question I've got here is, how confident would you feel if given 1 week would you be in securing the following jobs? So 1 is a promotion in the current role that you have. 1 is outside of your current role. So for example, if we're in finance, could we look to get a job outside of finance? Current level in terms of securing a job on the same level that we're at, and securing the same job that we have, but in a different company. So if you guys can just kind of click in and we can have a look and we can see how confident people are at the moment in terms of applying for jobs and how much value that they think they can bring. Okay, so from the, if I ask Alice and Bola as well, from these results, do you think that that's quite the norm? I think from my point of view, I find a lot of people get quite nervous when it comes to applying for promotions, but a lot more confident when it comes to securing the jobs that they're in the same kind of level. What's your guys' opinions on that in terms of your thoughts?
I like to see the fact that this promotion outside of current role is pretty high. I think that's really good, as opposed to a promotion current role, because that could be a bit more challenging. So I feel that the confidence here is pretty high, and I think that's good.
Okay, and Bola?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Yeah, it's always good to, I guess, kind of constantly reflect and think about the work you're doing and the value you bring, and whether whether you get that promotion in your current company or you can go external, but be really clear in whether in what path you potentially can take. So yeah, I think it's important to constantly think about these things.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. All right. I should have unshared the screen. So can you, are we back to normal? Okay, perfect. All right. So I have a couple of questions for both Bola and Alice, which will start off the conversation, and then I will try to bring in some of the Q&A questions and then provide some input myself. So from your point of view, Alice, you just touched on that you're able to have an impact and support Shell's transition. Bola, do you feel like in your day-to-day role that you're actually seeing Shell's transition occur, and are you able to have a kind of an impact in it in terms of what you bring to the table?
Yeah, so I guess the story I often tell in this space is so me and my closest friends from university, every year we go out for dinner and we meet up and we talk about how's your career going and how's life and what's new. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we all went out for dinner and one of my friends turned around to me and went, "We're still working for Shell. You guys aren't even trying to like change or reduce carbon emissions." And it really stumped me because at that time, the work I did, I could in no way demonstrate that that Shell was changing, even though I was being told it was changing. I could regurgitate back the lines that I read on presentations, but I couldn't tangibly demonstrate with actions of this is what I do and this is how the organization is changing. 5 years later, a completely different space in terms of some of the work that I touched upon around, looking to this year alone, having to have assessed multiple different acquisitions in either the e-mobility space or even in gas CRT sites, so looking to acquire LNG sites. So it's essentially to encourage companies to move away from diesel onto gas and encourage people to move away from petrol into e-mobility. So yeah, I very much live day and night trying to achieve these various aspects that Shell are trying to achieve, and that's on the low carbon space. I guess in terms of even the trying to make our company more diverse space. As you guys know, I'm the chair of Shell's Black Employee Network. So I get to be involved in really high level conversations with HR across the organization. And again, this is another space where I get to see visibly the commitments the company are making around trying to make its workforce as diverse as London in the city in which the office is based. And I get to speak to senior leaders and hold them accountable and work with them to devise strategies on how they're going to make their companies more diverse in this way. So I essentially get to live and breathe and really mold and influence how Shell is changing from the company it previously was to the company it wants to be.
Richard, can I just quickly add to that? I just saw to what Bola was saying in terms of electric vehicles. There's a question here about, do you think electric cars are to the oil refinery process? And I just thought I could link those two very quickly. One, I'll definitely say definitely not, right? For us, the electric business is going to be a substitution to the refinery process. We just don't have, as you're aware, the world actually doesn't have the infrastructure ready. We don't have the places where you can charge your cars. The vehicles at the moment are not there. They're extremely expensive. The average person cannot buy them. So it's a transition period. But the point is, we don't see it as the electric business will be a threat to Shell. Shell is transitioning. And I think we are marketing ourselves now not as an oil company, but as an energy company, right? So I just wanted to make that clear that it's not a threat. It's great if we can all move in this direction. But we know that we can't do it on our own. We need government intervention. We need them to start also investing money in their infrastructure and in different places as well. So I just want to link that in terms of what Bola is saying, because as he said, he's very involved in the EV business, and you can see it. Hopefully you guys can see it when you're traveling around. We have quite a few stations, don't we, Bola, where you can charge your cars as well.
Yep, and that's why I'm actually in Spain right now, because we acquired a company that in Seville that do have an electric charging network, and we're trying to increase our network in Spain. So yeah, it's very much at the forefront of our future strategy. So it's not a threat at all.
I guess from my point of view, in terms of whether I see us transitioning in my day-to-day job, my role in terms of being a valuation analyst is we provide economic and financial analysis across all of the Shell's businesses in terms of internal and external decision gates. And so I see the investments that we are looking at and the opportunities that we are looking at as we transition into more renewable energy solutions. And from my point of view, in terms of quantifying the risks and return across the kind of integrated value chain, my team kind of provide a valuation insight to decision makers. So from my point of view, I actually see Shell's kind of transition firsthand, right? Because the investments that we need to make, we need to make sure that we're prudent and that we evaluate them as well to make sure that we're actually generating shareholder value as well as also our kind of net zero emissions. So from my point of view, it's been really valuable to actually see it firsthand, because not only am I gaining the skills in terms of the financial modeling, in terms of the commercial negotiations, but I'm also learning more about the renewable energy industry as well, which I think in the kind of direction that we're going, it is invaluable. So yeah, perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on one thing also. Bola, you and Alice, you've both mentioned imposter syndrome, and the kind of concept of kind of lowering your own value or believing that you kind of you you feel like you have to fit in with something else, someone else's culture, way of working, or that you constantly have to reassure yourself that you are worthy of the roles that you've got. I just wanted to give my own my kind of own experience, and then we can open up for some questions as well. So mine is very, very personal. So as you can see, the picture that was used to advertise was an old picture of mine, and as you can see, my hair was shaved off. And I have always, basically, I grew up around Rastafarians. My hair was always long, and going over school, I was kind of told to cut it, and as you do, a lot of people have had that experience. And when I applied to Barclays, I actually cut my hair off. Because I felt it was what would be more professional to get the job, which was confirmed by the fact that I got the job, right? So I continued to cut my hair, and even though I actually felt like I was an asset to Barclays, I never felt that I was fully myself. I never felt that I fully brought myself to work, or I could be myself. And slowly but surely, I started to regain my own identity and have more of a forward direction in terms of how I wanted to impact my community, both in terms of my identity, but also helping people come up next in next generation. So that was one of the reasons why I also quit the job, because I actually felt that I was strong enough as a candidate to actually apply for roles, and that was where I kind of came out of the imposter syndrome and kind of looked at how do I build my technical knowledge to then apply for a job when everybody else is losing their job, right? And for me now, I believe that I am a bigger asset to Shell because I have my own internal value, and I'm very much aware of what my intrinsic values are, what my core values are, and what I want to do to have an impact. So, like you said, Bola is the chair of the Black Employee Network, and I currently lead the social outreach and volunteering stream of the Black Employee Network. So that's in terms of trying to look at giving opportunities in the community in South London to get STEM into schools. To get STEM into kind of schools, and to get more women and Black people into STEM and give us the opportunities that I had to kind of take 4 left turns to get to. And I think personally, I would also bring Bola to kind of talk about this as well, and Alice. Having that sense of direction, that the sense of community, has actually helped me in terms of my network, and actually also in terms of how I provide value outside of my day-to-day role. Um, so in terms of what you've done, Bola, in terms of talking to HR, in terms of impacting change, how do you feel like you've brought value to not only yourself, but the company and the kind of Black employee network?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of imposter syndrome, the way it's always showed up for me is I guess it's essentially doubting whenever I've been presented opportunities, kind of doubting whether I'm good enough to fulfill the opportunities, and B, how will I allow people to, how will I show and demonstrate my value? Some of the things I do is, I guess, relying on the things that I know intrinsically I'm good at. So like the examples I gave you around IT and spreadsheets, people who know me, it's a really silly thing, but anyone who's ever been in a team or meetings with me knows that I'm good at IT. So they'll always, if there's an issue or concern, I'll be the person they'll get, oh, Bola's good at IT. So I do that in a way to kind of always give myself, and it's a really silly thing, but like a base level of people know my value. Over and above that, as I've become much more confident in my experiences and my the work that I've delivered, I take time to reflect on the things that I do, and then also then speak up with authority when I enter spaces, in terms of if I'm in a opportunity framing workshop and we're trying to figure out whether an opportunity is going to be valuable or not. I will draw upon my experience to demonstrate to people, I don't think that will work, I think this will work, and try and stop people making mistakes I've seen historically made before. So I rely on experiences a lot. The same even in the work that I do within as being the chair of the Black Employee Network. I use my experience. So I speak openly and honestly to people around the various different levels of experience that haven't always been positive that I've received across my career. And I've allowed, essentially, I've got to the space where I realized that unless I actively take part, the change that I want to see won't, or unless we, and it doesn't have to be me, but us as Black employees take part, that the change we want to see won't materialize. And often people aren't aware of the concerns, the issues, the microaggressions, so forth. So I use my experience to help bring people into a position where, and even that in itself is value. Being able to make the organization a better place, and a much richer working experience for all people of all races and nationalities is bringing value to the organization. And it's changing that mindset of just going, well, these 1-2 things are what is value for a company, and expanding the horizon. And yeah, that's my experience.
I would definitely agree in terms of, if you want the change to be made, and if you want to improve, being involved is very much key, and providing your input as well. I'm looking at the questions here, and one is, Bola, have you ever been in a situation where you've had to push back on an idea or decision that you feel doesn't fully align with Shell or your own values? And I'll add that to both of you guys. I can answer afterwards from a valuation point of view. Alice, do you want to go first, maybe?
Yes, sure. So I think in terms of where I'm working at the moment, because I mentioned I work within trading, and we trade all different products. And when I'm looking at these financing solutions for our counterparties, there's situations sometimes where I feel that certain projects which are more our bread and butter, can I say, historically, so maybe more certain projects which involve crude oil, are given a bit more leniency, as opposed to like these really, kind of more sophisticated, crazy, scary projects like used cooking oil. And I always challenge that. And I think I want to kind of also mention a point before in terms of what Bola was saying. It's like, being true to yourself. One thing that I was not authentic about myself when I started is I'm very open spoken. Like I speak my mind directly, if I have to. But I didn't do that for maybe the first 5 years of my career. And that actually worked towards my detriment because you kind of think, as a Black woman, I don't want to come across as, aggressive and all those kind of stereotypes that, they put against you. So I was quiet and I put myself in my box, but I wasn't happy. It didn't do anything for my career. So I just started speaking up and I started thinking, I love this motto. I always tell to myself, what's the worst that can happen? And honestly, what is the worst that can happen? The worst for me that can happen is nothing, right? Nothing. But what can actually happen, which is better? You can make a change. And so I've started speaking up whenever I don't agree with something. And, we're very focused as an organization on this transition, but sometimes you see decisions are made where they're favoring, hydrocarbons as opposed to, being brave, can I say, or being more risk, taking and saying, actually, let's put more money into this side of the business. And so this is when I speak up because I say, this is not what our CEO is telling us, not our CFO. This is not what we're telling the market. We really need to try and focus our money here. I know it's riskier. We might not get it back. It might be a challenge, but this is the whole purpose of what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to pump more money into hydrocarbons. So I definitely face situations like that, but I'm a different person, like I said, to how I started now. I don't mind challenging people no matter how senior they are, because, like I said, they're not going to fire me. Well, I hope they won't, but yeah,
Yeah.
the point is I kind of feel, I can make a change there. And yeah, so this is what I kind of do within my space. Mentioning what Bola was saying in terms of community, I definitely agree. I think I'll be honest that I have not been that active in the network because, life gets really busy, but I really get impressed with the work that Richard and Bola do for the network as well. It's a great community, especially for grads who come into these big organizations and, they don't see many Black people within the organization. They can come to them, they can get mentoring, they can speak to them, and they can really help them as well. So I just also wanted to say, great work, guys. I appreciate so much as well what you guys do.
Cool. Thank you. From my point of view also, I can say specifically, we have had extremely large deals where we have decided not to do it because of the reputation or the ethical business behavior of our stakeholders, in terms of, are we either purchasing from a company that we're not aligned with, or are we entering into a deal that has a joint partner from a company that we're not involved in. So very much includes our ethical values in the investments that we make and the investment evaluations that we kind of carry out as well, and ensuring that we make sure that we are investing responsibly. We got a couple of this one's very interesting actually. Thank you to everybody who's put in questions so far. Yeah, really great. This one's from Jordan Lindsay for Alice, but I think we could all answer this actually. In terms of question for Alice, what flipped the switch to make you feel confident enough to start talking up more at work?
That's a great question. It was very easy. I noticed when I wasn't talking, nothing was happening, right? If you don't talk, nothing will happen. Like, I was just staying in my box. I was staying stagnant. My career was staying stagnant. I was getting frustrated. Nothing really would happen. And this is why I mentioned to me, what's the worst that can happen? Because if you don't talk, like you get frustrated as well. And it's about really being true to yourself. You might not be a talker, you might not be a challenger, that's fine. But if you are, you naturally would not feel comfortable in an environment where you're put in a box. So it wasn't an overnight thing. And I think it's really important for me to say that it took a long time, mentoring myself, can I say, and just looking back at my career and thinking, reflecting is a great word, saying what is going wrong? Why am I not happy? And then just started building that confidence and just started slowly, saying, actually, do you know what? I need to push back. I need to say things. And please don't get me wrong. You're not going to start talking and people will be like, oh yeah, fine, it's cool. Of course, a lot of people will be like, what, you speak? Like, you're not allowed to say that, try to push you back into your box, but just believe in yourself, honestly, and always maybe have that person, a friend, a mentor, someone, your cheerleader, to back you up and say what you're doing is right. You're not, pushing the box. You're not doing anything crazy. Your colleague over there does it all the time. Why don't they challenge him, right? So it took time, probably about 5-6 years before I started getting my confidence. I started doing slowly and slower, and now I really, I'm at that space, so I'm very comfortable doing it. And like I said, it's not always welcomed, by the way, but it's, it's
Yeah.
some things sometimes have to be said. Thanks.
I think it's the point of having positive challenge and positive disruption is actually value adding to the company, and value adding to discussions. For me, when I was always kind of going into the office, I was very cognizant of the fact that I'm twice the size of most of the people. And if I was then seen as being the aggressive one for kind of challenging someone or challenging someone directly in terms of their opinion, for example, or the kind of numbers that they're producing, kind of felt like I had to kind of keep myself in a box. But actually, my switch was when I realized that people who are comfortable in their position, comfortable in their knowledge, will always accept challenge. If you are confident in the kind of narrative that you're providing or your opinion, you'll always be prepared to provide justification when challenged. If you're someone who gets emotional that someone's kind of given an opposite opinion, that's when you can end up getting arguments and disruption. But actually, if you remember to yourself that you're actually being objective and that you're creating positive disruption, I think that's something that provides value for all the discussions. And actually, you need to be challenging yourself. You can't just have self-review where you have an idea and then you decide that that's what is the best, right? So I don't know, Vola, if you wanted to say anything as well.
Yeah, no. So this is an area that I struggled with at the early part of my career, and actually, I think part of it is a cultural thing. I grew up in a Nigerian family where people who are older than you were seen as people who are to be respected, and you shouldn't challenge their thoughts and opinions and authority. And that was something I then carried into my working career. And for large parts, I would, if I was involved in something and I was in agreement, I would be, yep, very involved, very boisterous. But if I was less in agreement, I would timidly maybe ask questions. The more I kind of have gone through my career and gained experience, and I guess confidence in in what I do, I've been capable of stepping in and like Alice said, I've realized that actually it provides a much more rewarding, richer experience in your day-to-day work life where you just actually speak your mind, and not having fear in that sometimes you may speak your mind and you'll be wrong, and I've got no problem with that, and people will demonstrate to me why I'm wrong. I've become incredibly confident with being wrong and learning and having a what we term a learner mindset. But equally, where necessary, I'm willing to challenge and question whether, and the great thing about being in finance is that if you're doing it correctly, it will present you multiple opportunities to really speak up and challenge why would you make that decision? Why would you go down that strategy? And then at the times where I don't want to be the person that kills it because, I might have to work with that person again, I would just go to my manager and go, when this comes to you for approval, if you ask this, this, and this, and that will kill it for you. I'm a big advocate for always speaking your mind.
It's a positive representation.
Sure.
If I got that word out. Perfect. So we're coming near the end. I will leave 30 seconds for anybody who wants to come off mute and just ask a question to us directly. Otherwise, there's one last question which we can all answer and then we can close. Does anybody want to come off mute and just say anything or ask a direct question? I'll give you 15 seconds.
So someone asked one question around, they gave their profile as being someone with 7+ years experience. I would say that's definitely something that Shell would look to and value. I would say go onto our website and look in your experience takes you out of the graduate recruitment bucket. I think it's 3 years or less experience allows you for the graduate, or graduated within 3 years. But the experience, we have roles which are experienced hires and into different business areas. I would say sign up to our careers site and get the various notifications that tell you that roles are coming up. And wherever something comes up in an area that you've gained work in, whether it be finance or function or HR, whichever area, apply for roles. But yeah, I would say definitely you would fall into the category of people we'd look for. Cheryl, I see you've got your hand up. Feel free to come off mute.
Hi guys. I just want to say thank you very much for a really sort of honest and insightful presentation today. I wanted to ask a question in and around imposter syndrome. I guess, Bola, you would probably be a bit more equipped to answer this, but outside of having sort of working experience to give you confidence, how else can you go about removing the mindset of being an imposter outside of like your generic work experience?
Yeah. So I would say it's not just work experience. I think it's actual like studying and life experience. Whichever role or whichever opportunity that's being presented, there's normally a reason why someone has chosen you, and there's normally value that's intrinsic to what you either you have on your CV or you have in your experiences and that you've expressed. That as long as what you've expressed is in the reality, that it will materialize in you providing value to that company. So I think it's always like very important to anchor down on what do you do and what are the things that you're good at, and because that is what then gives me the confidence whenever I enter scenarios to go into them with full confidence. But yeah, that would be my response. Any of the others, feel free.
Thank you very much.
I would just add, Cheryl, also add exactly onto what Bola said in terms of learning and developing your skills more. So for example, alongside my work, I also study CIMA, which is management accounting, right? So that then gives me more technical knowledge. I'm also working on in terms of financial modeling. I have a coach who, outside of my deals, helps me look at modeling certain hypothetical scenarios. It means that when I then go into calls, I have more knowledge and more preparation to be able to have those discussions, and also knowing that if I don't know the answer, I don't make it up and I say, give me the time and I'll come back. Because actually sometimes you need the preparation in yourself, if that's your kind of your way of working, that you can actually then have that kind of content discussion and the knowledge behind you. And I think that's what gives you more, kind of empowers you more, because then you're having a kind of an expert conversation as opposed to just a person-to-person conversation. And in finance, I think that's really key.
That's brilliant. Thank you both.
Also, one more, if that's all right, because this is one that is really important to me personally. Finding your community in your workplace, right? So I joined in the middle of lockdown. Like I joined, I was very much empowered. Like, I'm going to spend Shell's money on creating opportunities for the next generation. I don't care how I'm going to do it. I'm going to get volunteers. And I kind of stumbled into the network. I was in a network call, and I was then I then reached out to the lead and said, hey, just have a chat. How are you? Blah blah blah. And through being in the kind of committee, they are my family basically, and they empower me to go out and make those kind of schemes, or to run whatever kind of volunteering I want, right? So that kind of gave me the kind of allowed me to bring my identity into work, because then I was also known in the finance and outside of finance as someone who is also trying to push change. And that allowed me to kind of bring my whole self to work, because it's not just about finance for me as well. And having your community that is like your safe place, that you can start off being yourself in your safe place, because you know that they're going to be there for you, I think is very key as well.
I think one slight pivot on that as well is when you're about to undertake a task, or whatever it is that's giving you the imposter syndrome feeling, talk to other people that do it, talk to other people that are in that area, you probably realise that they're no more smarter, intelligent. That you've got the same skill set, you've got the same ability, if not better, and that your feelings are unwarranted.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank
Cool.
you.
No problem.
Amazing. I think we've got a couple of minutes extra as well. I've just asked if we can have a few minutes
Okay.
extra. So if anybody wants to
Come off
ask
mute.
any questions, yeah, just come off mute and we can chat. Otherwise, there's one more question I want to just ask Alice. So anyone wants to come off?
Hi,
We've
can
got
you hear
Jordan.
me?
Hello.
Oh, sorry, was there another person?
No, Jordan.
It's fine. You came off mute. They put their hands up, but they can come off. Ask after. Go for it.
Oh, good evening, everyone. I have a question. Of the 3 panelists out online today, thank you for the advice that you've given us. It's been very informative. But the question I want to put forward to you all is, have you ever had any setbacks which you might have taken a break from your career for, and how have you overcome it?
I've got a few, but I can go first or next if you want. I'll jump first. So I had a long-term injury, which forced me to kind of I was off work for a little bit, a few months actually, and at one point I was just trying to struggle to get through work, like coming in just like not 100%. And someone said to me, if you need 5 to 6 weeks to yourself versus a 50 year career, then make sure that you prioritize yourself and your health first. So I took the time off. And when I came back, I needed workplace adjustments to be made. And having that done in front of people, I mean, yeah, you have different kind of things that like the chairs and all of that type of stuff. But it taught me to prioritize my kind of myself in work, in terms of my health, in terms of also being confident that I need certain things in terms of the software on my screen, for example. And even though it was a setback, I think those moments taught me a lot in terms of when I came to Shell. I was very much insistent in my application, for example, that I need the chance to get up and go for a walk during the exam so that my back doesn't go into spasm, for example, or when I applied for Barclays, right? And I find that a lot of people hide those things at first and then get to the application phase and then you have to make sure that that comes with you in your package when you come to work as well. So that was mine from a more like a health point of view and prioritizing my health. I'll pass it over to Bola and Alice.
Yeah, I'm happy to quickly jump in. I'm going to share a bit of a personal one. Yeah, I didn't have a break per se, because I've always worked. But I would say there was a period in my career where I essentially, off the back of getting performance reviews that I was unhappy with, and not feeling I was getting the recognition that I needed I deserved for the work I was doing. I went into periods of essentially coasting, where I wasn't quite pushing myself to push my career as quickly along as possible. What snapped me out of it actually was when I did some work I did was seen by someone outside of my normal line of management, and they were like, "This work is incredible. Would you work on a special project outside of your normal day to day?" And I worked on that project. It took me to India to design some new system stuff, and then the person offered me a job to move out of the team I was in at the time. And then off the back of that, I've had managers and senior leaders who have just filled me with, I guess, also confidence in terms of really pushing my career onwards. So yeah, I've had those periods. I think it's the important thing is to be reflective, and constantly I've tried to increase my self-awareness in terms of challenging and checking myself and whether whether I'm taking my career, because it's my career to own, as seriously as I need to be, and ensuring that I don't allow temporary setbacks to become a long-term strategy. So yeah, that's my personal kind of setback story.
And you bring up a very, very key point before we close. Feedback is extremely key, right? I have different projects that run at different times and are different lengths, but it's important that I get the feedback through my stakeholders in terms of if there's anything that I can work on, in terms of anything that I've done well. And there will be times when you probably think that you've done an absolutely amazing job and you only get a strong. It's happened to me. Like, I had a year of doing a lot of stuff and only got a strong. It's an opportunity to actually show that you can take that feedback on and work on kind of improving yourself. And yeah, I can see that thank you for everyone for staying past time. Thank you to Bola and Alice for staying past time. Definitely thank you to everybody for asking so many questions and kind of engaging with us. Yeah, it's been a wonderful opportunity for all of us to kind of connect with you guys, and hopefully we might be able to kind of see you guys. You guys can speak to BYP if you want to connect past this webcast. But yeah, have a lovely evening, everyone, and yeah, God bless.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.